regular Board of Ed meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Nicole, you want to start us off?
Sure. Nicole Levine McGrath. Molly Smith. Debbie Sherman.
Mike Russo.
Vinnie Catadella.
Stacy Randolph Jr. Karen Delfino. Sue Condis.
Robert Carr.
Jacob Duckworth.
Hey, any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. At this time, audience of citizens, please, if you're gonna speak, please come up to the podium, state your name, address.
They know I have a presentation, right?
George Temple, Oxford First Selectman. Couple of things, I know that we had a bit of a problem with the physical plant at the Quaker Farm School. And I'm here to thank and congratulate the administration, the great job that they did in putting this together. And also thank our Housatonic Health Authority. Amy got the whole team here. They're all dressed up as ninjas. But I know they've been very helpful in determining the air quality. Of course, it never turned out to be as severe as people had said on Facebook. But you know, I think Ralph particularly did a great job being able to handle an adverse situation as well as he did. Thank you, Ralph. You know, I guess I shouldn't call you Ralph. You know,
I've been called worse.
yeah, so have I, by the way. There's worse things than Ralph in this world. But, you know, so, you know, I am very happy with the work that you've done. I know that on social media, things tend to get blown out of proportion and there's a certain amount of hysteria that goes with it. You know, as somebody that went through the flood, I'm aware of that. You just have to put your blinders on and not let it affect you, which I think this administration has done admirably, and I thank them. And I know I echo the sentiments of the rest of the Board of Selectmen. While I'm here, another thing that I would like you to at least start thinking about is at the guidance counselors to spend a little bit more time and effort on people that may be not going to college. And that could be probably most of the class eventually. You know, people try it, don't like it, now they gotta get a job. We have plenty of opportunities in town. I know a lot of people in our industrial community and commercial community who are more than happy to help us out. You know, there are programs that we can set up in the high school. Junior achievement is one. That's one that you know, that Victor has always liked, and you know, I think that's terrific. I'll give you a little example. About a week ago, a kid came down. I say kid, he's 32, 33 years old. Graduate, first class at Oxford High School. He and his buddy went to engineering school together, and they opened a business to track town roads, so that they could actually, it's an instrument that you put on top of the car, drive down, and they actually map them on a 3D basis and tell you what the condition of the road is, which is extremely helpful, you know, to when it's time to resurface or whatever. He said the service is about $10,000, but but they donated it to Oxford free because he felt that he wanted to give back to the community that put him through school and that meant so much to him. When you see that kind of, effort and that kind of results, I was very proud of them. Now they have an office in Boston. Both of them are graduates of Oxford High School. One of them lives in New Hampshire because he misses his country roots in Oxford. I don't know where that country is. He misses it. And the other kid lives in Boston. They have 40 employees already, and they have a room in downtown Boston in the office building. So, on several levels, this speaks very highly of our educational system here. Also, speaks very highly of the people that we are educating. And I certainly appreciate, the effort to give it to us for nothing. I was able to, line him up with a couple of other mayors and selectmen so we could help him out. But that's not what he was there for. He was there to give back. And, when you see that, you're doing a good job. So, once again, I think that if we had a little bit more, involvement with, our guidance counselors or whatever in the industrial community in Oxford, because I know that airport, the jobs are unbelievable. After 4 years, you make $125,000 a year. So I'll be starting my apprenticeship very shortly, but there are tremendous opportunities. We don't necessarily have to go to college. And that's, obviously I went to college and law school, but to me, it's very important that we look after everybody. So, I would really like to see this board go in that direction. Will also involve not the vast majority, but probably the majority of kids that don't want to go to college or are bored by college or whatever about college, but they could still be very productive citizens, and I think we should consider that on all fronts. That's all I have, and once again, thank you very much. Thank you to the board. Thank you to Ralph, and thank you to Housatonic Health, who was, I know, very helpful to you. So I applaud your efforts on that. I know how difficult it is, and but you kept your eye on the ball, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Anyone else from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Linda Chaplinsky, 30 Freeman Road. I have some questions on the proposed budget. Some of these are numbers oriented, some of them are general. So if you don't have the information at your fingertips regarding the numbers, I just want a point of contact to get back to me and follow up. But I did take some time to go through it. And first off, I don't know the last time that we've seen this level of granularity. Maybe I just haven't dived in a while, but it's appreciated. Very deeply appreciated that we can see a real deep dive as to how our resources are being allocated and where. So it's been a while since I've had kids in the school system. So I went through each of the overviews on each of the facilities that we had. And I'd like to understand a few things. I'd like to understand what a targeted tutor is.
Just to let you know, during our board meetings, audience to citizens, it's not a back and forth. So if you have questions, you can state them and we can have some follow up.
That's absolutely fine. All right, then let me go down the list, and then you just need to let me know, Mike, who my point of contact is and what the turnaround time is. So I'd like to know targeted tutors, Were any of the new hires that we're proposing because of grants that we've received? If they were hired because of grants, if any grants expired, were they now going to become part of the budget? I'd also like to know a little bit more about the paras. I see that we're hiring 3 new paras in Quaker Farms. I'd like to know what the thrust is behind hiring a communication specialist. I understand it's a part-time position, but I'd like to know what the responsibilities of that person are going to be and how we arrived at the need for one. Moving on to the high school, I would like to understand the rationale behind the new proposed course offerings. We've got AP Environmental Science, AP Pre-Calc, which also begs the question, kids are getting into AP Calc. They're getting in somehow. Why do we need an AP Pre-Calc class to prepare them? I'd like to know more about the catering and the ServSafe program. The EMT program, which we already are offering locally in town, so I'd like to understand why we feel the need to bring it into the high school. And also I want to know more about the post-financial literacy program. I'm interested in the rationale behind offering these. I'm interested in the startup costs and the ongoing costs as part of the budget. And also what your anticipated enrollment is for each of these classes. It's also interesting as I look at the high school schedule, I see, again, excellent breakout where we can see how your teachers are being assigned. But I'd like to understand why we have some classes, specifically AP, I don't think they're going to be on AP, where we are offering a class for one individual. And there are other classes where we've got, and I'm making this up as an example, let's say English, you've got 13 in one, 15 in another, then a 5 and a 6. Why aren't we doubling up on the 5 and the 6? The concern here, or the thought is, how do we achieve scheduling efficiencies to be more fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars? I'd also like to know for the proposed budget, and what is published is roughly a 5.7% increase. I'd like to know for those line items where we're seeing reductions, are those anticipated lower costs, or is that in effect cash on hand? Because that amounts to $283,393. If we remove that from your bottom line and just take your year-over-year change, then in reality, for those costs that are increasing, your budget request, your increase is 6.8%. So Mike, what do you feel is a reasonable turnaround time to have all of the answers?
Well, I don't know about turnaround time exactly. We're not gonna do a back and forth. I can follow up with you on this. But some of this information is in past board meetings that we have on YouTube. But we'll follow up.
Okay, I'm not gonna go sifting through.
I'm not asking you to, but
Okay.
I'm just letting you know, someone will follow up.
Okay, and how, when? Well, I mean, you need to manage my expectations, 2 days,
Not doing a back and forth.
2 days, 2 weeks. That's not an unreasonable request to Mike, to have someone manage my expectations as to when I can receive a response. That's not unreasonable.
You'll have some response within 24 hours, and after that, of all of your questions to your satisfaction, I don't have an answer. And we're not gonna,
That's fine. I just want to know when I can expect the first follow-up. That's fine, and we'll take it from there, and I'll give you my contact information at the end of the meeting.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizens?
Good evening. Zach Marquetti, 17 Old Country Road. I'm father of a first grade student in Quaker Farms Elementary School, as well as a professional engineer. I am specifically here today because I have a list of questions that I would like the board to help me answer, specifically in regards to the HVAC design for Quaker Farms Elementary School. I have 10 copies, unfortunately, there's 13 of you. So could we pass this out, or is there a preferred method of distributing questions?
I mean, you could send them to, you could distribute them if you like, but we won't be doing answers.
I completely understood. No, I'm expecting hopefully answers in 30 days. I think that's pretty reasonable. So specifically, the questions that I have, just an overview in regards to being fully transparent with everything that's going on. What was the criteria which was determined that the existing hydronic ventilators were deemed inadequate and needed to be absolutely replaced? That includes all the infrastructure associated with it as well. What professional engineering firm actually designed the ERV system? The FRP that went out in regards to the ERV system replacement called for all the ductwork to be replaced. And the design documents enclosed in that FRP said that all the exhaust and ventilation ductwork was to be reused. If that is the case, were the ducts clean and sanitized, and by whom? And when was that done? Was that before construction or just recently? Will the units themselves be commissioned, will they be tested to make sure that they're actually performing as designed? And just one more question in regards to the annual air quality checks. I could not find any record of any previous air quality checks that were done in any of the schools on the websites, nor the required 5-year review of the HVAC systems in the schools. So those are specific questions that I'm trying to get answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Anyone else from the audience? Hearing none. Moving on to workshop topics, Quaker Farms School update.
Nick, so what we have, to date is we have air monitoring continues daily from Environmed and PCRS. And all of those results have been published. The heating repairs are continuing. All of the ERVs, with the exception of the one for the cafeteria, have been plumbed, vacuumed, opened, and except for the second grade, there is a Y joint that failed that we're awaiting the replacement. The cafeteria ERVs will be hung and connected over the spring break. So we should be expecting the ERVs to come online over the next week, one by one. The sheet metal, the ductwork for the first, second, and kindergarten are installed and sealed. We'll be tying the exhaust air into the outside of the building shortly. The CO2 sensors that are equipped in that system are approximately 90% complete installed. So that should be done shortly as well. The VFDs still need to be wired to those systems, and the generator that we require is still required. The generator that we have is undersized. Do you want to continue with the rest of the portfolio? Or other questions?
I think you can continue.
Okay. At OMS, the chillers were blocked with snow and ice due to the drifting on the roof. Obviously with the weather, that's remediated itself and they're now cleared and working. And at the high school, we had a vestibule heater valve fail. Thanks to Nicole O'Brien, who gets in at like 3:30 in the morning. I'm exaggerating, but only by about 15 minutes. She was able to notify everybody right away. Paul Maribel also did a great job in mitigating some of the issues, so there was very minimal water and there was no significant damage, and that was repaired. And there was an issue with the kitchen vent having some like a sewer gas come in, so that's been addressed. And we've added a heater to the gymnasium storage room that's off the side of the gym.
Any questions from the board? I think we've gotten a lot of communications, a lot of details, more details than I think some of us ever thought we could get. But We have no questions. I just want to thank you for your effort, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the RFP for school-based counseling services.
Calendar.
Pardon me, I jumped right over it. 2025-2026 school calendar.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, that we've had 5 snow days and additional emergency days at Quaker. So in your packet, which was also posted online, where we are now at this point for the high school, middle school, and goes, the last day of school will be June 16th. And for Quaker is June 25th. It's the 5 snow days plus the 7 emergency days that we've had to have. So there's been some conversation about possibly utilizing spring break to make up time. So I want to share some information with you. I've been having conversations with our labor groups who have been very cooperative and having conversation with the folks they represent. So at this point, for those that want to know about spring break, we sit here tonight with about 17 to 19 people would be absent at Quaker Farms. And that's a combination of teachers, support staff. Also, we average 7 absences a day. All right, so I've been there for the last week and a half, and it's quite the challenge to cover classes and other spaces there. So right now, we sit here, we know that we have 17 to 19 staff members out because they have plans. We average 7 absences a day since the beginning of school. So there's gonna be more than just the 17 to 19. And we have 2 vacancies that we're unable to fill. We try to fill them with subs each day, but honestly, we get hurt that we can't fill the other vacancies there. So I've had several conversations, with the staff, and Mrs. Kincase, and at this point, we do not believe it's safe to operate the school during spring break. Because there's just too much variability, and we sit here knowing that we have at least 17 to 19 folks out. That's a lot of people, and really, we need to keep it a safe environment, but also, we want, high quality instruction to take place as well on top of that, and not just, combine classes and things like that, and it's just not what's best for kids. So that's kind of where we're at this point, and we still have a little bit more time, but right now it's not looking very good.
Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Go for it.
I'm wondering if you asked the teachers their plans for the days after June 16th, if they have plans already as well. Will we run into the same issue at the end of June?
Right, there possibly there could be. But, I did share, with the associations that, folks have been paid for the days that we were closed. So, there would be some type of, we would have to work through with the association that they've been paid for those 7 days. So if they're not gonna provide the service, we would have to work through that. But at the end of the day, we have to get the 180 days in order to, and it's 180 days plus 900 hours. So it's not just the days, that we also have to have the total 900 hours in order to claim and get all, receive all of our state money. So, but that is part of the conversation, but nowhere near the numbers that we're talking about for spring break. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ralph, on that.
If anything changes, I'll keep you posted, but right now, we've been going back and forth, but now those are confirmed absences.
Okay, moving on to the RFP for school-based counseling services. I believe the recommendation from the board is we are hoping to hear from the administration. Anyone from the administration that has experience with the school counselors, the counseling that we had in the school for 3 years, funded by a grant.
Yeah, I'll start that off. So this really came to light when I first arrived here in July. I was approached by a center, a clinic in our community right here that was interested in providing services for our community. And subsequently, another agency in our community came forward. And, we had, a counseling service, and we'll talk a bit more about that, in the district, for the three years prior to this year. So this is the first year that we haven't had a school-based, clinic, counseling center. So, and realized that a third clinic came forward. So we really got to a point in conversations with our school attorneys that we would have to go through an RFP process. And, we had this conversation, I believe with one or two of our board, committees. And then we brought it forward to the full board last month, and then, there are questions about it. So, we invited administrators here this evening to, share, the benefits of it. My prior districts, we had school-based clinics, counseling, we had dental health clinics, really to help support our families and our community. So, with that said, I'm gonna turn over to Garen to add a little bit more to it, and then we have some staff members who will share.
Thanks, thank you.
Yeah, so just to provide a little information on what the services had been in the district, we had a grant with CBH, and so that was for 3 years. Initially, the providers that were in place were focused on things like substance use, which is a fairly common practice for some of these outside counseling agencies in especially middle schools and high schools to be focusing on substances, providing education and services for kids that might require it. We had one provider at the high school, one provider at the middle school. Over the course of the 3 years, although those providers changed year to year, but, and the services that they were able to provide also was more expansive than substance use. And the way that typically occurred was, either parents would be contacting the school, asking for resources, talking about how they were perhaps struggling with finding time outside of the school day or finding a provider outside of the school day. And the school would be able to say, hey, we have this provider here. I can give you their contact information. At that point, the parent would contact directly the provider and move forward that way, if they would like. The other way is if the school had a concern and was speaking to the parent about the concern, could also offer the resource. And then the same logistical practice happened that the parent made the contact with the provider. Those services were also available to our elementary schools. So the elementary schools were provided the information and could certainly provide that information to parents. And those providers could come down to, float to the elementary schools if they needed to. My understanding is over the 3 years that was much less utilized than at the middle school and high school. So that's what had been happening, at least through that grant for the last 3 years. We do have Linda and our building principals here to fill in any blanks and also just speak to the benefits perhaps in the schools. Linda, did I miss anything in terms of the grant piece?
No, you hit it all. So, yeah, they were really there to promote, non-vaping and doing a lot of promotion on that, and anybody getting caught, working with those students. And again, we made it, anyone that was having trouble getting services outside of school because of hours, they couldn't find providers. We would contact parents, and parents would contact that provider.
And then did you guys want to speak to any other pieces of it?
Sure. When we kind of talked and reviewed some of the questions that were provided, figured I'd start from the elementary perspective. I think a lot of it will be the same moving up, but I'll certainly turn it over to anybody else that has anything to add. I can say in previous districts I've worked, I've had school-based health services. That were sometimes grant funded, sometimes through, other agreements. What's really nice about it is that there are times when parents cannot get kids to a provider, or we have kids that get picked up early because the only counseling appointment they could get was 2 o'clock. A parent's not gonna go to a 2 o'clock appointment and then necessarily bring their kid back for a half hour at the end of the day. Whereas if the child is able to receive that service earlier in the day, they might go 2 to 2:30. By 2:30, they're sitting back in the classroom. I want to be clear that ideally, kids are not missing instruction to go to counseling. That is never our first go-to choice, right? But we also know that kids sometimes need those services in order to be ready to learn and be able to come into school available for that learning. So when we have a child or a family who comes to us and says, this is going on, our first go-to is always, here are community resources that we can provide you. Because there is a difference between school-based services that are necessary for a child to get their education versus things that aren't really appropriate for school counseling. those are things that might be family issues or other issues that really are appropriate for that outside private counseling. And we don't want those two to cross. We want those boundaries to be clear. But we do have times when families say, there's nobody that I can find. There's a 6-month wait list, or the only appointment is 10 o'clock in the morning and I can't leave work. We've even had kids do Zoom appointments from their parents' car in the parking lot. So, you know, with all that being said, is there a need? Yes. Do we want kids necessarily missing class on a regular basis? No. But if it's what that child and that family needs so that they can show up to school every day in a better place and ready to learn, then we want to support that. So as far as what's happened in the past, because of the way that grant was set up, there was a lot more emphasis put on middle and high school. But those flyers were made available to us at the elementary school, and I did share them, and our social worker and school psychologist did share them with some families. We did not last year have anybody take us up on that, but there were parents that, you know, had that need, and we were able to, or they were able to find something else. So again, not our first choice, but if it's the difference between a child with necessary help versus not, we want to make sure they get that help, because in the long run, it helps them in school, it helps them socially, and it helps them academically. I mean, I think that pretty much covers it in terms of kind of, you know, at least where I'm coming from and I think we're coming from. So again, it's about providing a service that can be very difficult to get, you know, for a parent who's working in a community, not just this community, but any community right now where mental health services for the adolescent and child age group are hard to find. There's typically a wait list. When we have a parent come in and say, oh, I just found this new place and it's working out really well, we're like, ooh, what's the name? Give us the card. Because there's 10 other families that are looking for that same resource. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or if anybody's got anything to add from the middle or high school. Cover it.
So, hi, everybody. So at the middle school, we had, 2 counselors over the course of the year. Essentially with us full time for 5 days a week. And they were, like any other community resource, the parents would fill out release forms for us. That was part of the onboarding process with the students so that they could collaborate with our in-house team if we needed it. And just like Mrs. Missett said, we wanted to make sure students got what they need without missing class. So these students did not have other services through special education, or these were students who were off it and had behaviors that would be potentially to addictive issues, whether that be depression, attendance, things like that, that we flagged in the team model during our meetings, that we could talk to the parents about, and then they could come back and refer with the counselors that were the social workers that worked with us. So just to give you kind of a visual of what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. But they were with us full-time 5 days a week, unless they were working in a high school, or, you know, we tried to be flexible with them.
I also know some of the questions were around what, like what part do we as the school play in this? The answer is really none, other than connecting families to the service, and trying to make sure that when they do schedule, you know, we're helping make it happen in the least disruptive way possible. But in terms of, you know, do we have any say in who goes to see them? No. All we can do is say to a parent, hey, you need a resource, here's a possibility for you. And at that point, you know, we step back out of it until they come to us and say, oh, I made arrangements, they want to see the child in the school. Can you make sure that it's set up the best way possible? Yeah, no problem. In a previous district that I worked, we had, the only communication we had with the person working with those students was the same as we would have with any outside provider. There has to be a third-party release sign letting us talk to them, and it would only be in the sense of, hey, we're planning for this student. Do you have any tips or tricks, or, you know, that two-way communication that could help with both the outside counseling and with our planning for educational purposes in school. But just like any other outside provider, we're not calling them on a day-to-day basis. We're not saying, hey, so-and-so's having a bad day, can you come down? That's our job. We take care of that. We really are just providing, you know, the resource, the connection, and possibly the space for a family that can't do it any other way. Outside of that, we are just doing what we do.
And to build upon that, so the way this is structured, there's no cost to the school district. We provide in-kind services, space, a phone line, and then the way, if we move forward with this, the selected agency would use billed through the parents' insurance company. So the parents fully informed what's going on, and they seek reimbursement through the insurance, the family health insurance.
Okay, any questions from the board? So I mean, the point for this is if we have questions on what's happened in the past, because that's mainly the topic for this agenda item. Do we have any questions for how things were done, or Stacy?
I'm just wondering how you keep the child's privacy private. You know,
How the school
how,
keeps,
yes, like, how does that work? How does,
private from other classmates or parents or community?
classmates?
I think it's like
Do
any
the
other
teachers
service,
know?
when kids are taken out for, even if it's just like if you're taken out for extra help for reading or math. Kids are going out, all the time for different services, so students don't actually know, oh, they're going for counseling, or they're going for speech, or they're going for reading. So they just know that they have a pass and they're going somewhere, so kids don't really know that they're going for their counseling service.
Certainly at our level with the elementary, like I know in middle and high school, it might be the child, they know where they're going, they just go, there's no adult picking them up or taking them. At the elementary level, they almost would probably know less where they're going because it would be a less familiar face. But we do have lots of staff that are in the building on a part-time basis that do toll kids. So it just kind of becomes one more helper, one more teacher in the building that pulls kids. Right now we have a social worker and a school psychologist that pull groups as well, and they are very familiar to the children. They know who they are. And I would like to say that our kids are very accepting of the fact that everybody goes to different services and different things. I don't think that it really is a thing that creates stigma or shame for our kids. So I think it's just one more teacher, one more helper they see in the building.
Any other questions?
We're basically on the question of what happened before, like, so where were the commissions that we had through the grant, where did they, like, have an office, or where did they work out of?
At the high school, they had an office, adjacent to where the rest of our school counselors and social workers are. So again, it was private. As it is now, when our students come to the main office, there's a phone, they dial the extension for their counselor, whoever it is, they're there, they're available, they walk on down to the office. And they meet for their 30 minutes, or whatever it needs to be, but it's a private space, so no one is walking by and nosing around and investigating like what they're doing or why they're there.
But they were sharing office space, like this company, they're asking for their own, right, so is there a difference? Like,
I can only speak to the high school. Last year, my person had a dedicated space that was her own. I would say that would remain true if this moves forward. Whoever it is that we decide to select would have a dedicated space that would be completely independent of anyone else's use.
Yeah, ours at the middle school had their own office space as well, private to them with their own phone line.
Any other questions?
Can we ask any kind of question, or just?
It's supposed to be for the workshop topic. So for this topic, it was to discuss what's happened in the past, so we have an understanding. Next, board meeting, we have a vote where there's discussion of whether we want to do it. And it's up for any question is up, but for this workshop topic, we brought it back just for the purpose of what's happened historically. Because there's some concern of, what happened, and we wanted to make sure, because in the past, we didn't have the building admins in the meeting, and, Dr. Marino and Dr. Mullen, they weren't here when it took place, so we wanted to make sure that for 3 years, it's been in our district.
So then, do we have like a way of seeing how successful it was, like a metric to determine, was it worth it? Like, how many kids actually use the services? I heard that they really didn't use it at the elementary. So how many kids were actually being pulled out?
Linda, do you have an approximate, number, maybe not by building, but maybe by building? I don't know if you have that type of data.
So I would refer kids, and so wouldn't keep track if they were going, because our job, again, we were hands off, so if we knew a child was having difficulty having services, I would call the parent and say, we have this service, and I would set them up, so I would give the parent the clinician's number. So I wasn't aware of every student that maybe, I knew a handful of students that I knew that went, but I didn't, like, again, we didn't get involved, that was their service. At the high school, I know 2 that I know of that were using the service.
I'd probably say at the middle school, we had consistently 5-ish, but that fluctuated based on situation. So if we had a situation arise that involves a substance, we would refer them to the clinician, and then the clinician would reach out to the family to set up that counseling.
2 and 5, so, okay.
Bobby, any questions? Okay. I think we're good on this topic. Thank you. Thank you for coming to help give us an understanding of what historically has happened. Moving on to the Board of Education handbook draft. I don't know, Ralph.
Okay, this is a work in progress, so we are now at the point where we're bringing it back to the full board for any final commentary, feedback, before we kind of finalize it. So Deb's been very helpful, resurrecting what was started a few years ago, and Garen adding finishing touches with update policies. So any other adjustments or anything like that, because we'd like to have it approved at some point. Would have it for handout.
So who led the subcommittee? Was that Deb? So I guess if anyone had questions or
Ad
follow-ups.
hoc, right?
Ad hoc.
We just.
Vinny was on it, Garen, somebody else, right? Karen, right? Karen, yeah.
Basically, we took the handbook that we had done several years ago and updated it with correct policy numbers and, just different things that we thought would make sense for board members in the community to know what Board of Education actually does.
A lot of the links and stuff that Garen put together, it's specific to the district, so I know like the CADE workshop was helpful for the new members this time, but this has stuff that's, you know, specifically linked to our policy handbook and what we're doing here in Oxford.
Looks great. I've gone through it a couple times. But you guys did a great job on it. So at the next board meeting, are we gonna be voting to adopt the
Probably should,
updated
right?
version?
Then, yeah, we'll make official copies. Copy of it.
Okay. Moving on to the Board of Education retreat goals. We had a retreat in January. Was it January? February. February felt like a long month. So I mean, I could read the goals, but we met, we filled out surveys, we had a great conversation. You know, and I think we keyed in on 3 areas. I'll read them for those that can't see our agenda. But support the newly adopted communications plan to enhance information sharing with parents, local officials, and the community at large. I think we had a great audit of our communication plan, and I think we want to make sure that we are supporting that plan and doing what we can. So our communication is as responsive as possible. Participate in professional development, which enables the board to support student achievement. And third is review, discuss, and sign the code of ethics on an annual basis and commit individually and collectively to the principles it reflects. So do we have any feedback, any adjustments to the goals that were shared during our retreat? Okay.
At this point, everybody signed the code of ethics, correct?
Yes, 100%. And soon we'll have a handbook to sign as well.
Did we put these on the agenda for the motion to approve them as our board?
I think so,
Okay.
for the next. Okay. Do you have any other questions on the board retreat goals? Okay, round two, audience of citizens for comments on our workshop topics. Do we have anyone? Going once?
On the, counseling. It's a little disingenuous to say that there's no cost to the district because there is a cost to the district. If administrators are helping to coordinate, that's a cost to the district. If we're turning on lights, if we're providing office space, if we're giving them a phone, it's a cost to the district. It's typical Hartford fashion to dangle a carrot in the form of a grant. As I understand it, this was a $300,000 grant for 3 years, and then pull it back, which means now the town has to absorb it. And I'm pretty sure this is not your budget, so we're talking another 0.25% increase if you all go out to RFP and you decide this is something that we want to offer. I understand work hours can be challenging, okay? I've raised kids, I've commuted. Somehow we figured it out. And I understand the clinicians aren't always available. However, it's not up to the school system to be everything to everyone that someone wants. Maybe it's time for the clinicians to adjust their hours to make it more convenient for parents to bring their children in. I think one of the things that disturbs me the most, and this is also classic Connecticut, no one is asking why. We keep throwing money at stuff. We keep wanting people to reach deeper into their pockets. And you have people in this town, all socioeconomic backgrounds, okay? And they are struggling, and you cannot keep going back and asking for more. Eventually you run out of other people's money. Let's start looking at the why. We have such a sad increase in kids that can't cope. They get into trouble, they get into substance abuse, they have problems with social media, they're bullied. Why aren't we asking the why? Why aren't we going after the root cause and fixing the root cause? Enough, enough. You can be pro-education, but not pro de facto education as the parent. Heard Dr. Marino say that another district, they had dental services. Well, I made a joke saying, hell, why not just bring in Planned Parenthood, the dentist and the pediatrician offices? My jaw dropped when you said that, because that's where we're heading, and it's not right. It's not right to kids. It's not right to the taxpayers. Parents need to step up. We all have issues. We all have problems. We all have challenges. Put on your big boy pants and get it done.
Any other comments from the citizens on the workshop topics? Once, twice? Okay, at this point, do we have a motion to enter into executive session?
Motion to enter into executive session to discuss,
You have the thing, blurb?
oh no, I was just gonna,
Sorry,
I was just gonna make it up as I went.
yeah. I forgot to give it to you, sorry.
Go through them. Okay, I hereby move to enter into executive session to discuss the proposed collective bargaining agreement between the Oxford Board of Education and AFSCME Local 1303-230 custodians covering the period from July 1, 2025 to June 30th, 2029, and to invite into the session Superintendent Marino, Assistant Superintendent Mullen, Director of Finance.
Noah.
No, it's not. Oh, no, it's
He's here, he's here.
And, Noah Langer and Chief Operating Officer Michael D'Agostino.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.